that was our first thing in Netflix, in the Netflix arena. And now if we go back to cinemas, what did you see in cinemas this week?
I saw a film called Dog in the cinema, which I think
Dog.
is quite a good companion piece to Desperate Out because again, it was filmed during the lockdown, post-lockdown period, and
Mm-hmm.
most of it is one person interacting with a dog, and
Yep.
then have other people come in as like cameos almost. So they do sit side by side quite neatly.
Mm-hmm.
But Dog is a film about an ex-serviceman played by Channing Tatum, who has was injured and then invalided out of the army.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous sort of. He was a ranger, I believe, and his platoon were a lot of them were injured and invalided out at the similar time. The dog was injured, and the dog's handler was injured, and they were all basically invalided out because of the nature of their injuries. And now he is desperately trying to get back into the service.
Yeah.
And in order to get back into the service, he has to prove basically that he's fit to do it. And he's been desperately trying to get this certificate of fitness to say you can come back in because you're no longer a danger to yourself or to anyone
Yeah.
else. You're, he had a brain injury, so that would obviously make him more vulnerable in any
Yeah.
combat situation. And basically, he agreed to his colleague, who was the dog handler, um, was killed in a car accident, and the family have requested that this officer's uniform and the dog attend the funeral,
Yeah.
which is a week away in sort of Arizona, and they're basically up in the northwest, so
Yeah.
they're up above Portland, up in the practically Canada.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so he has to travel a long, like a, and they won't can't fly with the dog because the dog's injuries it's not amenable to flying, so they have to drive this dog over 5 days from one top of America down to sort of Arizona.
Yeah.
And so, and in he was told that if he will do this, they'll sign his ticket to say you
Yeah.
can come. And so it was almost like a, you do this for us, we'll do this for you. And
Scratch our
then
backs, we scratch yours.
yes, which I can't think it's not ethical. It's not safe. But this is where the arrangement is like, no, we're my old buddy in the army and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What's a ranger? Always a ranger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then the film progresses. Basically, it's a road trip between this man and the dog,
Yep.
and you get to see, in some ways, it's like about the rehabilitation of him through these sort of series of misadventures. He encounters different people, some sort of not sex workers. They're like tantric. They help people with sort of sexual health by
Oh
sort
yeah.
of
Yeah. 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 Gotcha.
like, and he encounters them and he's like, what? Hey, I'm in here. And then they're saying, actually, your body's in pain, you're in pain, we would like, to try to help you. And so the story basically is about their both of the dog and his rehabilitation. Now, the dog is very sensitive, it's can be quite aggressive, and it can turn on, it gets very stressed, it's always panting because it's stressed. It doesn't
Yeah.
like being touched on, so it's part of his body because it's like a trigger for
Yeah.
aggression. And so most of the time the dog's had to be muzzled, and when it's not muzzled, it will be tearing furniture apart, tearing the car apart, and it's sort of they're both damaged in each their own ways, and they're
Yeah.
both struggling. So there's this journey, and as each person you meet, another element of their past is revealed, and another sort of step on the path to rehabilitation is sort of achieved, slowly, slowly. And so, but one of the things we don't know at the beginning, or you learn quite early on, is that after the funeral, because the dog is so unpredictable, they don't believe she'll be safe to be rehoused. So
Oh
they
yeah.
take her to be euthanized, basically.
Yeah.
And so his journey is to take her to the funeral and then take her to the nearest army base where they will safely euthanize her because she's just not safe to be around.
Yeah. So it sounds like it has all the elements of a tearjerker. It sounds it sounds like it has the elements of a tearjerker, and also the fact that it's an American road movie. And that is a bit like what we're saying with the one person on screen for most of the time thing. It's something that if it's done properly, it can be really, really good. And I think road movies, when they're done properly, they can be almost sort of like magical and almost sort of like transcendental. And if they're not, they can just be really cliched. Like, this is the point where we meet the old person who has lived a law of life and has a whole bunch of wisdom that's going to pass us down to that, and is going to tell us the one thing now that's going to make, like, fix our lives for the rest of at least the film. So things like that. So how is this done?
There's elements of that. There's elements of like, um, and they can't resist introducing humor because it's a Channing Tatum film. They cannot resist making light of it, and because
Yep.
they're quite heavy on the humor, it does take away some of the pathos.
Yep.
So instead of you really seeing the emotional journey of this man and this dog, you
Yep.
see one sort of funny incident leading to another funny incident, leading to a sad incident, leading to a moving incident, really just like, oh, this is real. Let's take
Yep.
it real. And then it's like humor again. And so where it sort of switches between, and because it's, this was just my prejudice, because it's an American film, it's got quite a broad humor.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's sort of not terribly subtle, because I quite like the subtle nods where it makes you laugh,
Yeah.
a gesture, because of a look, whereas this is much broader than that. So I find the humor sometimes can be a little bit heavy, and then the words of wisdom again can feel a little bit heavy,
Yeah.
rather than, we'll drop this here and let you think about it. It's like we're going to really punch you in the face with
We
this one.
gotta, we gotta ram this point home.
Yeah, and again,
Cue the strings. Cue the strings.
there's a moment where you, it almost like there's a moment where it's like, okay, cry now moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was watching this with a friend, and we were both a bit like, oh, this is, and we were the only ones in the cinema, and we were a bit like, oh, this is a bit emotional, this moment, because we were chatting to each other a little bit, not a lot, but we
Yeah.
were both, oh, that was, oh, and you think, yeah, there was a bit like a cry now moment. So I could see what they wanted to achieve, but for me, it wasn't subtle enough in its nuances to actually
Yeah.
achieve that. But it was a good effort. So I would give it a 3 as, again, like a companion piece. There's elements of it I liked very much. Some of the things were genuinely funny, some of them were genuinely moving, but those sort of subtle, that sort of flow to me was a little bit lacking to make it a really powerful film. So I would say good effort. Again, it was like the other film talking about, a commentary on life events. This was again
Yep.
a commentary on, there's a whole generation of young men who went to Afghanistan and fought in
Yeah.
Iraq, and a lot of these men have been cast out into the world basically on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And service dogs have been like, we're going to train you up for this one role, and then when that role is finished, we've got no place for you.
Yeah.
So it's about, taking responsibility for your men and for the other people that you've have served your country in whatever capacity.
Because I was getting a little bit of a feeling about this film, like there was a certain genre of films going back to the 70s again. A certain genre of films in the 70s which were about the Vietnam vet getting home, and
Yeah.
then what happens to them when they get home, and how, yeah, you've done this, you served your country, but now you don't fit in society anymore. We don't have a place for people like you in society, so good luck. And I was getting snippets of this, like this, obviously because Afghanistan has some similarities.
Yeah, a war that
Yeah,
went on for a long time
yeah, it has some
with no
similarities.
real
Has
conclusion. It just
Yeah,
dragged on
has a
for
similar
5.
fallout. Yeah,
Yeah,
has a similar fallout, and I was getting that kind of feel of this. Like it's kind of like almost, one man traveling across and seeing the state of America and trying to figure out what his place in it is and stuff like that. But anyway,
yeah.
so that's 3 stars for Dog.